Namaskar. I am Dr. Nalini Avinash Wagmare, working as an assistant professor at Tilak Maharashtra Vidyapith. This is my brief information. Today's our topic is related to Indo-Islamic architecture. Under that, we have to study Mughal architecture, Delhi Sultan Shahi architecture, even some points related to Bahmani periods also. So first of all, we have to go to the study related to art and architecture under the Delhi Sultans. This why we called as a Indo-Islamic architecture. The art of architecture made a remarkable progress in the Delhi Sultans. The political history of Delhi Sultanate is a long list of wars of succession, revolts of nobles, religious intolerance, relieved here and there by the career of a few evil rulers. But in the domain of culture, Islam brought a refreshingly new outlook, which the ancient culture of India had a reckon with. The interaction of Islamic and Hindu culture is a subject of absorbing interest as it affected way of life, ideas, literature, art, and architecture. Because what were the characteristics of this Indo-Islamic architecture? Actually, the architecture of this period represents a blending of Indian and Islamic styles. The Indo-Islamic architecture derives its character from both sources, though not always in an equal degree. In India, the culture of early Islam is best represented by the architecture of the period of Sultanate. The art of building of this period is a harmoniously blend of Indian and Islamic traditions. Many of the characteristics of Indian architecture are obvious in the building of the Muslim rulers. This is due to the fact that though they were designed by Muslim architects to suit the requirements of religious ideas, the buildings were constructed by the Hindu craftsmen, whose services the conquerors were compelled to utilize. It should be noted that the Indian craftsmen then formed the finest artistry of the world with a long tradition of skill and culture behind them. The fame of their craftsmen was such that Timur carried away some of the best Indian craftsmen to build a mosque in Samarkand. As such, Muslim architecture was influenced by Indian craftsmen. That's why this architecture, Delhi or Mughal Shahi's art and architecture, we called as a Indo-Islamic architecture, because the patronized by ruler and artisans are Indians, basically Hindus. Then Muslim contribution to Indian architecture. The Turkish rulers brought with them new types of buildings such as mosques and domes, which were new to this country. Because earlier in India, we have only temples, caves, other things, some other monuments. But because of Muslim domes, mosques, whole style is changed later on when the Muslim invasion on took and when the Muslim rulers ruled the Indian states. They also brought with them an expert knowledge of the use of concrete and mortar, which had hitherto been little used in India. The free use of these strong materials, construction of minars and minarets, intricate geometric devices, and graceful decorative use of sacred text and historic inscriptions, there were the definite contribution of Muslim to the architecture of this period. Thus, the characteristic feature of Indo-Islamic architecture are derived from both Hindu and Muslim sources, so not in equal measures. The Delhi Islamic influence predominated, but in the provinces such as Jaunpur, Gujarat, and Bengal, etc., the Muslim buildings were predominantly Hindu in character. Then the buildings of Tughlaq period have a solemn and savory character. The richness of details and decorative devices which characterize the structure of Khilji sultans gave place to simplicity and purity, including the rigid Puritanism of the outlook of the Tughlaq rulers. So in this art and architecture, every ruler patronized the artisans, but their style and the statue and the building style is totally different one. The tomb of Ghiasuddin Tughlaq, massive and savory, suggests strength, simplicity, while the walls and fortification of the city of Tughlaqabad, which he built, indicate the consciousness of defensive needs. Muhammad bin Tughlaq built the fortress of Adilabad and the city of Jahanpana in the suburbs of Delhi. His successor Firoz was a tireless builder. He built the palace as Firozabad. All these structures, although impressive, show esteem, disregard of architecture, prettiness, and of the influence of the Hindu art. This reaction came to an end in the period of Ludi Sultans, when the magic to act of Hindu craftsmanship again endured the architecture with life and warmth. By the time the Muslim power was established in India, the Muslims had fully acquired a fine taste for buildings and had developed their own notions about architecture. The condition in which the Indo-Muslims are grown up made it necessary that there should be a fusion of two ideals. One is Islamic and another is Muslim. So both styles they use in their architecture, in their buildings, in their mosques, in their tombs, in their monuments. Mainly in the monuments, even we find in the forts also. Example are mentioned here. Buildings of the Delhi Sultan slave rulers, Qutub Minar, one of the famous in India. It is also called as a, which was what we say, founded by the Qutubuddin Aibak and completed by the Iltutmish. Then again, Quwwatul Islam Masjid, that is also shows the Delhi Sultan's contribution to architecture. Then Adai Din Ka Jhopada, Ajmer, all built by Qutubuddin Aibak. It is built in 2.5 days. That's why it is called as a Adai Din Ka Jhopada. Hausi Shami Badami, then Shamsi Idgah Badami, Zamia Masjid Badami are built by Iltutmish, and the tomb of Iltutmish, Razian, Balban, etc. all built in the Delhi. And this shows till today also there how they patronize those artisans. But all of those, only Qutub Minar and Quwwatul Islam Azim deserve special mentions because of their importance and their contribution, and because of their the tourists and others attract to these places. The buildings of Khilji rulers, Alai Darwaja, Alauddin built many mosques, forts, and tanks, and laid the foundation of some great cities. But he built the new city of Sirte, New Delhi, full of beautiful buildings, of which the fort of Siri and the palace of Hazar Stemba had won praise at the hands of the contemporary authors. Alai Darwaza near Qutub Minar was also built by Alauddin Khilji in 1311 AD. This is considered to be the best dream of Islamic architecture. Totally, we not find a Hindu influence on this. House Khas of Delhi was also built by Alauddin Khilji. The place is now a popular picnic spot of Delhi and now a Puj colon of South Delhi. We find this monument still existing in surrounding Delhi. Then other buildings of Tughlaq rulers, Ghiasuddin Tughlaq laid the foundation of Tughlaqabad, a new city near Delhi, and the ruins of which still attract a large number of the visitors. Muhammad Tughlaq also laid the foundation of another city near Delhi called Jahanpana. Nothing is now left of this city. Vijay Mandala can still be seen. It was the palace of Muhammad Tughlaq. There is also a beautiful mosque near it. Then Firoz Tughlaq was a great builder. Some of his great cities were Firozabad, Hisar Firoza, Jaunpur, and Fatehbad, etc. It is said that Firoz Shah built as many as 845 public works, including the towns, bridges, hospitals, public baths, dams, mosques, colleges, hotels, palaces, public wells, and pillars, etc. He brought two of Ashoka's pillars to Delhi after facing a lot of difficulty. Again, Firoz Shah Tughlaq was a very great builder, and he patronized the Muslim architectures, artisans, and for that purpose also he brought many artisans from other places to Delhi, and he patronized them, and he started the construction of so many works in Delhi. Then buildings of Sayyid and Lodis rulers, the tombs of Mubarak and Muhammad Shah Sayyid and the tombs of Sikandar Lodi were built during this period. Even whenever I started to Kutubuddin Aibak to till now, right side I show these one pictures related to this uh, architecture. Other buildings of this period are the tombs of Bara Khana, Chote Khana, Bara Gumbaj, and Matki Masjid, etc. Lodi gardens still exist in Delhi and thousands of persons visited them. And most of the visitors who came to Delhi, they also visited these all monuments to for interest, for get the historical knowledge, for interest for talking. Then buildings of the, some provisional Bahmani and Vijayanagara rulers. Because when we come to the Delhi Mughal period or medieval Indian histories, art and architecture, that time not only we study the only Delhi or Mughal styles, we have to also study the related to Bahmanis and Vijayanagara rulers. After the fall of the Tughlaq Empire, various provinces like Malwa, Gujarat, Bengal, and provinces in the south became independent. A number of beautiful edifices were constructed at the provisional centers. The chief among them are the Adina Masjid, Chota Stone Masjid, Barasona Masjid in Bengal, the Jama Masjid in Gujarat, the Jama Masjid, the Hindola Masjid, and the Jabai Mahal at Malwa, Altar Devi Masjid at Jaunpur. At Dar, the old capital of Malwa, two mosques were built fully out of the remains of old buildings. The domes and the pillars of these mosques were of Hindu form. The buildings at Mandu, where the capital was soon transferred, were marked by Muslim traditions as those of Delhi. The various buildings at Mandu are Jama Masjid, Hindola Mahal, Jahaj Mahal, Asang's Mahatom, Baza Bahadur, Rupmati's palaces, marble and sandstones were used in these buildings. In the south, Jama Masjid at Gulbarga, Chand Minar at Daulatabad, and College of Muhammad Gawan at Bidar are excellent specimenships of mixture of Indian, Turkish, Egyptian, and Persian arts. When you go to Bijapur, Gulbarga, Bidar, you find the mixture of these two cultures: Indian, Persian, Egyptian, as well as Turkish. Then directly we go to the Mughal art and architecture. With the exception of Aurangzeb, all the early Mughal emperors had a fine artistic taste. Most of the Mughal rulers interested to give importance to this artist work, except Aurangzeb. The century covered by the reigns of Akbar, Jahangir, and Shah Jahan was the golden age of Mughal culture. The period witnessed a glorious outburst of activity in architecture, painting, and music. All these Mughal set up standards which still exert the admiration of all. The cultural richness of each was possible because the Mughals, by their strong and wise government, ensured a long period of peace and prosperity. Because of even Mughal period, in the period of Shah Jahan, we called as the golden age period. Then features of Mughal art and architecture. The Mughal architecture is a mixture of the Islamic architecture of Central Asia and the Hindu architecture of India. And the Akbar was primarily responsible for its origin and development. The basic features of Mughal architecture were the construction of domes, high minarets, mihrabs, pillars of varied types, open courtyard, etc. During the early period, red stone was used for the construction of buildings. An attempt was made to make them large and strong. But during the later period, white marble replaced red stone and emphasis was laid on the beautifully buildings with the help of colored designs, use of gold and silver platings and minute carvings. Then architecture under the Babur, Humayun and Sher Shah. It was in the domain of architecture that the Mughals made their most impressive contribution of Indian culture. The monuments of Mughal from one of their just titles to fame. The buildings of the Mughal period owed much to Hindu ideas of decorative detail, as in the ornamental pillars at Fatehpur Sikri and the brackets of Shah Salim Chisti tomb, but their type and the architecture principles are fundamentally Mohammedan. So in the Mughal architecture, most of the Mohammedan or Islamic type, but we call them as the Hindu Islamic also. The so many art and architecture related to Mughal period, but here briefly we are explaining. The pronounced dome, the slender turrets at the corners, the palace halls supported on the pillars, and the magnificent gate in the form of a huge semi-dome stuck in the front wall and bearing an admirable proportion to the building. The actual entrance being a small rectangular opening under the arch are the silent features of this type. The finest example of such a gateway is Buland Darwaja at Fatehpur Sikri, commemorating Akbar's conquest of Gujarat. In his brief, Babur found little time to build because Babur had no time because he conquered India and he was busy in political affairs. Only the three mosques have survived: the Kabuli Bagh at Panipat, related to Babur, the Jami Masjid at Sambol in Rohilkhand, both built in 1526, and another mosque within the old Delhi Lodi Fort at Agra. Humayun built at Delhi a new city, Din Panha, refugee of religion, but very little of it is traceable among the ruins of the old building. It was perhaps demolished by Sher Shah building erected by Humayun. The best are in Delhi. Then Jama Masjid, the mosque of Isa Khan and his tomb, a bold combination of Hindu and Muslim elements. The tomb of Sher Shah standing on a high platform in the middle of a lake at Sasaram in Sahanabad, district of Bengal, is extremely Muhammadan in style and only some Hindu features in its inner doorways. The noble mausoleum is one of the best designed and most beautiful buildings in India. Buildings of Akbar's time, Agra Fort. The most of the edifices of Akbar's time were built with red sandstone, a very hard material, but Akbar worked wonders with it. One of his earliest buildings in Tomb of Humayun at Delhi, which bears evidence trace of Persian influence, but was also influenced by the Indian art traditions. Its Indian features are evident from the free use of marble and the absence of colored tiles so frequently used by the Persian builders. Akbar adorned his capital Agra with many magnificent buildings such as Diwan-e-Am, the Diwan Khas, and the palace known as Jahangiri Mahal, which shows the striking features of Hindu style. Akbar's most important buildings are found in Fatehpur Sikri, 26 miles away from Agra. So many monuments related to Akbar he built the time. This shows that the Indo-Islamic architecture. Then here he converted a hilly tract, the lair of wild beasts, into a city which became a Muslims of execute artistic genius. The most impressive buildings of Fatehpur Sikri are tomb of Sheikh Salim Chishti and Buland Darwaja. The tomb is of the most elegant shrines in India. The Buland Darwaja is a massive gateway, 176 feet high. It is a marvel of architecture skill. Akbar promoted fusion of Hindu and Muslim art tradition. The Palace of Jodha Bai is also a magnificent structure. It is the synthesis of the most striking features of architecture achievements of Akbar. The decorative style of Hindu and Jain temples have been freely used in this. Akbar's mausoleum at Sikandara is a unique sculpture modeled on the Buddhist viharas of India. It was planned by Akbar but constructed by Jahangir. A careful study of Akbar's buildings will bear out the truth of Abul Fazl's observation that his majesty plans splendid edifices and dresses work of his mind in the garments of stone and clay. As such, buildings are very impressive one. Then we take the Akbar was the pioneer of Mughal architecture, but the first buildings constructed during his reign by Haji Begum is the mausoleum of Humayun at Delhi. Akbar himself constructed the forts of Agra, Allahabad, and Lahore. Many buildings with these forts and his best buildings at Fatehpur Sikri like Buland Darwaja, Jami Masjid, Panch Mahal, Jodha Mai Mahal, etc. These are still existing, and most of the foreigners, Indian, tourists, historian, researcher attracted to these things and still they are in a good condition. Then buildings of Jahangir time. Jahangir had fine artistic sense of his taste, were for painting rather than for architecture. He patronized more to painting than architecture. The two more important buildings of his reign are the Tomb of Akbar at Sikandara and the Tomb of Madhur, Dawla, which was built by Nur Jahan over the grave of her father. It was built of white marble. It has been decorated with semi-precious stones of different colors. The same feature is seen in the Gol Mandal temple at Udaipur, which was an earlier architecture. The tomb has rare beauty and grace and marks the transition from the sandstone edicts of Akbar time to the white marble structure of Shahjahan. Jahangir completed the mausoleum of Akbar at Sikandara, 8 kilometers west of Agra city, and his own mausoleum at Lahore. But the most beautiful buildings constructed by Nur Jahan during his reign is the mausoleum of her father, Madhur Khan, which are still existing in India, in Agra. Then Shahjahan, the prince of builders, we all know that the Shahjahan period as a golden period, and he more patronized the architecture, artisans, and other things. So here that's why word used that Shahjahan period as a prince of builders. Shahjahan was the most prolific, magnificent builder among the Mughal emperors. In his time, the art of building in India reached its zenith of perfection. In exquisite beauty of form, in symmetry of design, and in skillful decoration, Shahjahan's buildings are unequaled. They may be regarded as jewel facets magnified into the architecture. He spent crores of rupees upon his buildings, and they are to be found various parts of empire. But Delhi and Agra share the best of them. Shahjahan found the Mughal cities of sandstone and left them of marble. Now he adopted marble for construction of buildings. We all know that the most famous building built by Shahjahan is Taj Mahal. The most magnificent of his monuments is the Taj Mahal, which was built in 1630 to 1653 at Agra in memory of his favorite Queen Mumtaz Mahal. It displays a rare combination of the finest art and the most expert construction. It is still regarded as one of the wonders of the world. While praising its dome, Percy Brown writes that the crowning glory of its elevation lies in the shape and volume of the dome, which supported by a lofty drum appears like a closed recline upon his anchory throne. It is a dream in marble and evokes admiration of all. Its charm is heightened by its sheer simplicity and design. The master architecture under whose guidance the building was designed and complete was Ustad Isa. Shahjahan time this Taj Mahal also called one of the wonder of the world, and really it is a very beautiful one. When today also if we visit this Taj Mahal, not only Indians visit, there are many foreigners, European tourists attracted. This Taj Mahal attracted them. Until today, it is in a very good condition. So I argue the history students who are listening lecture, definitely in your life, once you visit to this Taj Mahal and see it, because I also visited there. Really, it is in a beautiful one. Then Shahjahan constructed Red Fort and Jama Masjid at Delhi. Several buildings in the forts of Lahore and Agra, the Moti Masjid in the fort of Agra, and the famous Taj Mahal, thus taking Mughal architecture to them. The Mughal architecture, which is basically Indian progress, much during this period. Then other buildings erected by Shahjahan are the fort of Agra, Diwani Am, Machi Bhavan, Diwani Khas Mahal, Zaroka, Nagina, Peak Mosque, Delhi Fort or Red Fort, which is very famous still today existing in Delhi, Diwani Am, Diwani Khas also, even the famous Jama Masjid. Shahjahan also laid out charming gardens at Delhi and Lahore. The seventh city of Delhi called Jahanabad was built between 1638 to 1658. Then in the time of Aurangzeb, with Shah Jahan's death, the Mughal art in all its manifestation began to decline. There are so many reasons. His son Aurangzeb cared little for architecture and less for painting and music. In the absence of royal patronage, the art less for painting and music, the architecture or buildings construction is declined one. The few buildings erected in Aurangzeb's reign, like Badshahi Mosque, are but full imitation of older models. Ibikam Akbara, which built by Aurangzeb, still existing. It's the we called as a mini Taj of the Deccan. Then development of Mughal painting. The art of painting suffered during the period of Sultanate, but the Mughal revived it. The Mughal school of painting developed as a result of happy blending of Persian and Indian painting, both of which had made remarkable progress independently of each other. Babur and Humayun tried to introduce Persian art in India. Akbar patronized both Indian and foreign painters who all worked together, blended the Persian and Indian painting together, and thus created that art which has been called the Mughal school of painting. Jahangir was too much interested in painting. He knew the art himself also, encouraged all painters and took painting to the peak of its progress. During the reign of Shah Jahan, painting declined while Aurangzeb totally discarded it. Thus, painting progressed during the Mughal period and beautiful original works were created, though it remained aloof from the life of the common people. So, briefly, I have explained related to in this lecture Delhi Sultan Shahis, Mughals, Bahmanis, Vijayanagars, art and architecture, contribution to art and architecture, and still most of these monuments, mosques, forts are existing in India. Whenever you get the time, you visit these places, which are our legacy of India. So thank you very much. Before that, these are the books you can refer for study. Perseverance, Indian Architecture, Islamic Period. Kumar Swami's History of Indian and Indonesian Art. Divekar, Socio-Economic Source of Maratha Period also. Even Ferguson, History of Indian and Eastern Architecture. Lalit Kumar Shukla, Hindu Art and Architecture. R.C. Majumdar, Advanced History of India. R.C. Majumdar, another book, History and Culture of Indian People, that is also important. Even recently, Radhika Session written a book that is Ideas in Institution in Medieval India, which give information about ideas in institution related to Delhi Sultan Shah to the Mughal. So this book is also very, very helpful to you. Even Upendra Singh book, History of Ancient and Early Medieval India, Medieval Indian Art and Architecture Rulers, their contribution. Very briefly, this book give you information. So thank you.